I'm going to go ahead and do some demo. The first thing that I want to show is I want to go back to our button example. Here is our button example running with the text in it. You can see that when I click on it, the background changes. And when I let go, the background goes back to the default color. Now, you'll notice here that we're setting the color property to do that. But since this is a rectangle, we also have all of the properties of this rectangle exposed to the main.qml. So here, we're also able to set the color. And you might wonder what happens if we set the color. So let's go ahead and set the color to yellow and run this again. Now, when this happens, but we have yellow here as the color of our button. And when I click, the color of our button is still yellow. Now, this isn't very good for a control that we want to have this feature where when you click on it, it changes color. So in order to make it so that this cannot be overridden, what we want to do is we want to wrap this inside of the type item. The item itself is the base of many of the QML components that items that you'll be using, and it doesn't have anything but the most basic properties that are going to be exposed. So in order to change this, we're going to go ahead and move our properties and our signals up here and the name. Our rectangle, I'm going to anchor to fill its parent now. And then I'm just going to run this. We should have the exact same thing. We still have that yellow. Oh, that's right. We can no longer assign the color here. So if you've noticed, I now cannot build this because in main.qml, I can no longer set the color property of this item because item by default does not have a color property. So we're forced to now use the defaults we've built in here. So now we're back to the behavior we had. But let's say we want to expose these colors. We can just make properties for these. So we're going to make a property. It's going to be an alias. Actually, we're going to use a string. We're going to call this color. And we're going to set its value to be gray. And what we'll do here is instead of this gray, we'll use the property root.color. By using the root here, we're fully qualifying where this color comes from. So there's no confusion because by default, it's going to try to use the rectangle's color property, right? And then we're going to make another property that's going to be a string, and we'll call this pressed color. And we'll make this one light gray. Here, we're going to replace this again with, we could just do pressed color because there is no pressed color property of the rectangle. But I always like to make sure that they have root before them. So I know that their property is belonging to the root. And now, if I run this and in our main, oops. If I run this, we're still working as we were before. So now I can, in my main, I can set these properties. We can set the color. See how they come right up with the code completion. So let's do green for its default, and we'll do the pressed color. We'll make that yellow. And now when I run this, we're going to override those defaults. So one thing to remember when you're making components is that the properties of that you're binding here are defaults. If they can be overridden by the main, it will be overridden. So you want to be careful to only expose the properties that you want to be changed, which is why often we'll wrap them inside of the item type itself. Now I'd like to show you an example also of the items. Here is our item collection. I apologize for how small my file manager is, but you can see here is our main.qml file, and in here is our items folder where we have our two new items. So I'm going to switch to this project here. You can see that in our main, I'm using the name button and new button. These are the names of our items. And when I run this, I have the two different buttons are going to show up. We have the button that we have been seeing, and we have a new button which tries to use the colors of my desktop to select the clicked color. Now, this is useful if you have a whole bunch of items, but it's not particularly useful here for these two buttons. If you have two kinds of buttons, it's best to version them into a module. And the way we would do that is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a folder like we did before. Just go to the folder we're in here. So here is my version 1. We're going to create a folder for what we want this to be called. So if we look at our version code here, in our main, I am importing button 1.0 into a thing called button 1 and button 2.0 as a thing called button 2. And this is our new button and our button that we had before. And they're both called button here. So what this is version 1 and version 2 of a button. And the way that we would set this up is in our folder here, we have another folder for the name of the module you want to import. This could be my components, let's say, if you want to have a whole bunch of components in there, right? And then here, you have to name them inside a specific way. It's the object name dash the version number .qml. And then we create this QML-dir file. This QML-dir file contains only the name of the module, what we're going to call the import. So we have button 2.0, and that's going to refer to button-2.0.qml. Button 1.0, which is going to refer to button-1.0.qml. So now when we use them, since we've imported them into these namespaces here, we're able to use button version 1 under the name button here and button version 2 under the name button here as well. So when we run this, we have a very similar thing to the other to the items where we have our initial button and then we have our updated button. Now, like this is useful if we wanted to have, let's say we made a series of controls, buttons, checkboxes, lists, and so forth. And we distributed something based on those, but we also wanted to work on version 2 of those at the same time. That would be good to use this because then we can import version 1 of a control or version 2 of a control. And if we needed the backwards compatibility, maybe we had changed something in the way they work, we'll be able to preserve it that way.
Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more, please subscribe to our channel and check out the free QML programming course on our website. The link is in the description.